قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's Wednesday morning. That means it's time for another session of Let's Talk. Assalamu alaikum. Great to be with you. I do hope you're going to stay with us right up until 10 o'clock. And after that very light-hearted show on Saturday, we've moved to the more serious stuff, and I do hope that you're going to enjoy what we have lined up for you. We're going to start off by talking about autism this morning. Then we'll also talk about metabolic syndrome, and we'll be wrapping up by talking about suicide. So serious issues this morning, and we do hope you're going to participate in the program by calling in on 011 086 7777. And in the process, stand a chance to win a sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets, or an Amla hair care hamper from Amka, and also Ria Katsikas, who is our second guest on the show, who is going to be talking about metabolic syndrome, is going to give away one of the books that she's written on the condition. So all of that in the program this morning. Do stay with me. Welcome. Lovely to have you on the show with us. And on to our first guest for the morning. She's from the Center for Disability for Children. Her name is Naomi Kraus, and we're going to talk about autism. Naomi, good morning. Welcome to the show. Good morning. Okay, just correct me. You are from the center, the Children's Disability Training Center.
That's right.
That's where you're from. So, who are you? What do you do there? And what is the Disability Center all about?
My background is educator. I taught at mainstream schools for many years, and then I taught at a school for autism, and that is where my passion for autism started. Then I moved on to work at the Children's Disability Training Center, and there our focus is on upskilling educators, therapists, on how to work with children with disabilities. We focus on autism, but we also cover other disabilities. So we do a lot of training. We've got different workshops. We also have a stimulation center where we assist parents how to stimulate their children at home, and while they're waiting to be placed in a school or a preschool, nursery school. So.
Okay, we're talking autism today specifically because it is International Autism Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a well-known and well-understood enough condition? I'm wondering, parents who have children that suffers from this disability would obviously go out and try and understand what it's about, do as much reading and research as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the lay person out there? If they don't know that your child is suffering from autism, how do they respond to you? What is it that you tell them? If you're a mother of a child suffering from autism and you go out visiting, what are the social rules, the do's and the don'ts?
Mm-hmm.
Just how challenging is that aspect?
It is very challenging for parents. People in general don't understand autism. They see your child as naughty, just give him a hiding and get over with it. They usually see that you don't discipline him enough. In general, people don't understand autism. It's not a physical disability that you can see there's something wrong with the child. People usually just see the challenging behavior.
So what is autism?
Autism is a developmental disorder, and it involves abnormal development and also brain function. And usually it involves social difficulties with social interaction, verbal and non-verbal communication, repetitive behaviors, sensory modulation difficulties. That is mainly what and I think what the lay people see is usually the social interaction and the challenging behavior.
Mm-hmm. Now there is it's a spectrum disorder,
yes.
And obviously some children present a very mild form of autism, and then you have obviously the very serious form.
Yes.
Just how debilitating is it for the child?
It all depends where on the spectrum the child is. If it can be on the, as you say, very severely affected by autism or very mildly affected by autism. But even very mildly affected by autism, that individual still battles with social interaction, with understanding social cues, it can be verbal, but still that social communication is difficult. Also with sensory modulation, that also creates challenging behavior. So
explain what sensory modulation means.
That is how your body, our bodies take in sensory input from the environment around us, and then that information goes to the brain, and that's where the brain take the information and interpret it, and then tell the body how to react according to that. So, for example, a child, for a normal person, normal modulation can be the light is on, it's bright, it's fine, you understand. But for someone with a hypersensitivity to visual input, for example, that light will be too bright, and it will cause challenging behavior. So I'll start throwing a tantrum or closing my eyes, and so the way my body or my brain reacts to that input is different from a normal reaction.
And obviously different children or adults with the condition would respond differently to different stimulation.
Yes, and that was make it so difficult, because you can either be hyposensitive, it means you can't get enough, you stare at the lights, for example, and then you can get hypersensitive, where everything is too much. And every sense that we have, the auditory, the visual, all of it is different. You can be hypersensitive to the one input and then hypersensitive to the other input. And also, autism is a lifelong disorder. The sensory modulation difficulties can be temporary. It can be a problem now, but they can overcome it. But it can move to, I can be hypersensitive to auditory input now, and then next month I can be hyposensitive to visual input. So it is an ongoing thing.
You say it's a lifelong condition.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it means that you don't outgrow it like other possibly children's diseases, etc. But in terms of being a lifelong condition, does the condition get worse as you grow, or with the correct intervention, and we'll talk about that in a minute or two, do you think that the person is better able to cope and become more and more independent as he or she grows older?
That all depends on the intervention. With the right intervention, the person can be more independent, and that is what we work towards independence. Maybe not 100% independence, but as much as that individual can manage. With no intervention, or not the correct intervention, it can get worse.
Do we know why children are born with autism?
No, unfortunately we don't know. There has been research for the last 40, 50 years, and but there's no specific cause. There are some risk factors, but there are no specific cause that you can say this is the cause for autism.
What would the risk factors be?
For example, it can be, a lot of scientists believe that it can be genetic. So if you have a child with autism, it's possible that you can have another child with autism, but we can't say that is a cause of autism, because we have so many families with a child with autism and then perfectly normal children. If you're a boy, your risk factor is more, because more boys are affected by autism than girls. It can also be environmental factors, when you're exposed to certain metals. And that.
What are those metals? So I'm just thinking, if we know,
we don't know exactly.
don't.
So yeah,
because I know in Johannesburg, obviously with all the mine dumps,
yes,
there's this big worry about the uranium, how that's contaminating the water, the groundwater, and the vegetation around us, and we're ingesting it, and we're not quite sure. Or perhaps we are, do know that already it's beginning to, affect the people around us. So I'm just wondering if we knew what it was, perhaps we could take the necessary precautions.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Parents who have a child that presents with this condition, how and when would they realize? What are the signs and symptoms? And at what age would they realize, oh, my child has a problem, it might well be autism?
Yeah. Usually if you see that the child's milestones are delayed, and we all want our children to be perfect, and so often parents are in denial and they think, oh, the child will get better. But usually by the age of 3, you see that your child is not developing the way that his peers develop. And we usually see it with communication, social interaction, and the child's got special interests in certain, and 1 or 2 objects instead of like a normal child that would play with anything. A child can, for example, just play with a car or just play with a ball, and usually it's not functional play. They would line up the toys, or they would spin the wheels instead of playing with the toys. But usually around about 3 years old.
I'm wondering about the school system. Are we geared up to cater for these children, or do we have special schools for them? If we do, are there enough of these schools around the country? Because what you did say to me off air was that 1 in every 65 children, 68, 1 in every 68 child is born with autism. Now that's a lot of children. Yes. So we need to be catering for that amount of children in our school system, and then also when they enter the workplace. What does the future look like for them as far as the workplace is concerned?
Not very bright. Definitely concerning the workplace. If I go back to the schools, now for many years they've been completely ignored, and we haven't taken it seriously enough. There's not enough special schools for them, but the department is working on it, and they are building new schools. There's also, they opened quite a few new schools for autism in and around Johannesburg this year, and that is wonderful. We're very excited about that. But there are not enough schools for our children. They can be accommodated in mainstream schools if they not, just mildly affected by autism. But even then, they do need assistance and they need support.
I'm wondering about them being accommodated in mainstream schools. Are the teachers geared up to deal with children with autism? How is it impacting on the teacher, the rest of the class, and of course the child with autism?
It is very, very difficult. During your trainer as a teacher, and in South Africa we don't really have courses at universities where you trained how to work with children with especially autism. Because children with autism are so different. You cannot put them in a box and say this is how they are and this is what they do and this is how they will react if you do this and that. They're all different. You have to look at each and every individual when you work with them. And especially our mainstream teachers, they're not trained in working with special need children. And it's very, very difficult for them. And you can only really help a child if you understand the child and understand the disability.
And that's where your training centre comes in. But before we talk more about that, talk to us about these overlays here. They look very interesting. What's going on here?
That was is a workshop for educators where we want them to experience, because we believe that if you, our children are visual learners, and they remember easier and they learn easier if they experience things. So we believe in multi-sensory learning. So here the teachers are experiencing, that is for custard. So the kit that you see on the one side is cornflakes. They crumbled it up, they heard it, they smelled it, they tasted it, and they glued it on the sea.
All right, but these are adults.
These are adults.
So who
and
are
they're not
they?
on the spectrum, they're educated.
Oh, they're educators,
Yeah.
so you teach them, and this is what they're going to take back to the classroom and teach to the
so
children.
We want them to experience what the children is going to experience, because then they understand the children. So we use things that the child can then associate the k with the cornflakes, the k with the custard. And he will remember it because he smelled it, he tasted it, he felt it. With the cornflakes, he even heard it. You know,
So it's
the
all
sound.
about tactile.
It's all about sensory experiences,
yes.
multi-sensory teaching.
Okay, and then the children, I see they're busy with colours, or are they counting what's going on there?
Yes, this child is sorting out choosing the yellow one, so it's colour, and then also he is counting the sticks. Our children are visual learners. Visual over verbal is the motto. So if you just give the child 5 plus 5, to them it's often just an abstract concept. But with him counting the sticks or counting counters, that is how they learn and understand better. So we always try and teach it on their level of understanding.
So it's all about tactile and feel and touch and taste and smell.
Yeah.
And they perform better if you go that route.
If they experience it more than just heard it.
If you have a child that has mild spectrum of autism, and you don't have what you've just shown us on the clip now, if you don't have that sort of teaching going on in the school, how well is he or she going to fare in the school system?
Usually they don't understand what is going on in class, and that then results in behavior difficulties, because if you're bored, you don't behave or you don't listen. So actually the child is not benefiting from it at all. And that is why we try and assist the teachers and the therapists also how to create resources that is visual for the learners to understand.
What about parents? Is there a centre, or can they come to your centre, for example, to learn how to deal with this child? Because it's fine to take the child to a therapist, but is that going to be enough? To give mom and dad the skills to be able to stimulate this child, hopefully for a more fulfilling life.
Well, for the child's intervention to be successful, it's very important that if the child is in a school, that the school and the parent and the therapist, they all work together, because then the child will be more successful. If they only do get the intervention at school and they go home and they don't get the same intervention, it just breaks that pattern. So it is very important that the parent work with the school and with the therapist. So yes, the parent, we have a stimulation centre where we children that's not involved in schools and on a waiting list. That's actually why we started the centre, for young children that's diagnosed of autism around about the age of 3. But we also find that we have children coming to our centre at the age of 12. Because some of them are in schools, but they don't.
Can I ask you to hold that thought, please?
Okay.
We'll talk some more right after the ad break. Time for us to take an ad break. We will be back with you. Don't forget to call in. Lines are open on 01108677777, and there are giveaways this morning: a sweet hamper, a hair care hamper, and a book on metabolic syndrome. Welcome back. This is Let's Talk with me. It's the Wednesday edition. Great to be with you in the studio. We've had to end the previous discussion, unfortunately, because we're running out of time and our other guests are on board already. We're going to talk metabolic syndrome. We're going to talk diabetes. We're going to talk about the worrying trend all around the world. In the United Kingdom, it is said that by the year 2020, they're going to have very, very high rates of morbidity, diabetes, but a large section of the adult population will be classified as morbidly obese. What does that mean? And we know that when they sneeze in the first world countries, we here in Africa then catch a cold. So whatever happens elsewhere in the world is going to be happening to us here in the southern tip of Africa. So we need to be vigilant about all of these conditions as well. So let's talk to the dietitian in the studio with us. Her name is Ria Katsikas. She's going to talk to us about metabolic syndrome, and she's going to talk to us about diabetes as well. Ria, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here. And of course, this is a book that Ria has written. She's co-authored it, am I right?
No, I'm the only author.
Are you the only author?
Yes.
Okay, it's called The Complete Nutritional Solution to Diabetes. And the good news is that this is the book we're going to give away on the show. And for you to qualify, all you need to do is to call in. We're not going to ask you to answer any difficult questions. Just call in, share your thoughts with us on the show this morning, 011 086 7777. And you can stand in line to win either this book, a sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets, or a hair care hamper from Amla. But let's get to the heart of the matter, and that is metabolic syndrome and diabetes. You are the specialist, Ria. You a registered, qualified dietitian. What is the difference between metabolic syndrome and diabetes?
I think let's start with the definition of metabolic syndrome, and according to the International Diabetes Federation, it's actually not a disease. They call it a physiological condition, and it's characterized by a cluster of metabolic abnormalities that increase your risk to develop not only diabetes but also cardiovascular disease. And how it sort of works is the key feature of metabolic syndrome is abdominal fat cells. They release substances that make our cells resistant to insulin. So metabolic syndrome is a pre-diabetes condition. So the pancreas, because the cells are becoming resistant to insulin due to also genetics, also lifestyle, stress, it's not only abdominal fat, the pancreas now try to compensate by producing far more insulin to overcome this resistance. And that carries on for years. These beta cells in the pancreas get tired and exhausted of working so hard, and they die off. So we get beta cell failure because of the insulin resistance. And then there's a critical stage where there's just not enough insulin. It's like a factory closing down. The production gets less and less and less. Not enough insulin to move the glucose out of the blood into the cells, and then the doctor said, you've got high blood sugar levels, you diabetic, and then diabetes get diagnosed.
So you're talking about the that
abdominal fat cells.
Yes, the visceral fat.
The visceral fat is the fat in around the organs and on top of our tummies. Basically,
that's how you pick up that if you don't do anything about it now,
yes.
If you don't go on a good diet, if you don't lose weight, if you don't change your lifestyle,
exactly.
That a couple of years down the line, there's a big possibility that you're going to be diagnosed.
Absolutely, and it's not only how it manifests in cardiovascular disease, as these abdominal fat cells also increase blood pressure. These substances, we call them in medical terms adipokines and cytokines, but they increase blood pressure. They also they cause the blood to become thicker. They also affect the health of the arteries. They cause these arteries, the inner layer of the arteries that goes into the heart, that provide the heart with oxygen and nutrients, to become less elastic. So the coronary arteries lose its elasticity. And then lastly, it also these abdominal fat cells release inflammatory markers. And we know that heart disease, the arteries get inflamed.
Absolutely.
And that's why we need to be serious about losing weight.
Hold that thought. We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the show. Is our caller there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, loud and clear. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. We are speaking to Mohammed Pitole.
Yes.
I want to know what's the science to see that person with diabetes. Hello?
Can you just repeat that question, please? I didn't hear it.
The signs.
All right, we're definitely going to cover that, so keep watching. We're going to cover all of that and lots more in the show. Thank you for calling in, and obviously you do stand a chance to win one of the prizes today. Thank you indeed for your call. Well, let's get right to it. What are the signs and symptoms?
You see, it's very individual, it's not profound, it's tiredness, it's sudden weight gain, people get cravings for sweet, floury types of food, and then in some individuals on their skin they develop like a velvety brown patches and skin tags. How doctors diagnose you with metabolic syndrome, according to the International Diabetes Federation, is a waist circumference for men more than 102, for women 88 to 80. It is low levels of good cholesterol, that's the HDL cholesterol, high levels of triglycerides. This is a type of fat that our liver produce, and fasting sugar higher than 5.6, and blood pressure. So there's 5 criteria, and if you have 3 of that 5, you are in a pre-diabetic state and you've got metabolic syndrome.
So metabolic syndrome comes first,
And then diabetes.
and then the diabetes.
So, yeah. So if you don't address metabolic syndrome, if you don't start living healthier, depending on your genetic profile and other factors in your life, like inactivity, stress, it's not only one thing always, can then increase your risk to develop type 2 diabetes.
There's a big emphasis on nutrition and diet as far as metabolic syndrome, and I guess any disease or condition for that matter, is your diet and your lifestyle.
Yes.
Talk to us. You are a registered dietitian. Talk to us about it, and then also I'm going to ask you about the sugar tax. Do you think it's a good idea or not?
Yes.
Are we just eating way too much and way too much sugar?
Yes, we do. We do. If we look at weight control and blood sugar control, optimal weight control and optimal blood sugar control, we need to, I call it the TQ2 rule. T stands for the times. We need to say, when are we eating? Then Q1 is the quality of foods. What type of foods are we eating? Q2 is the quantity of foods we are eating. How much are we eating? It's not only say, what can I eat? It's how much do I eat? When do I eat? Why do I eat? So it's complex. So in terms of what we would recommend to lose weight, and if you do have metabolic syndrome, is have 3 meals a day, don't skip meals. You can snack in between, you don't need to. We warn people to not just snack inappropriately grazing through the day. This is how we've become. We see food, we want it, we eat it. We don't eat always when we're hungry. And by the end of the day, your calorie intake is more than what your body needs or burn up, and that's how we gain weight. Okay. Then in terms of the quality of the foods, we get carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And the carbohydrates, that's all our food from plants, affect the sugar levels most significantly. And we encourage people to eat unrefined, unprocessed, high fiber carbohydrates, like whole grains, like corn, sunken beans, lentils, beans, rolled oats, high fiber breakfast cereals, seed bread, heavy breads, wild brown rice, to the expense of carbohydrates that's been refined. That is your white and brown bread, focaccia bread, ramazzinis, naan, rotis. Those are white flour type of products, pies and pastries and biscuits, and then foods high in sugars, sweets, chocolates, fruit juices, Coke, all those type of high sugar foods.
Ask you to hold there. We've got callers coming in. Assalamu alaikum to our caller. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam. I'd like to ask your guest, I'm diabetic and I'm on dimicron. How many dimicron should I take per day if your sugar is between 6 and 7?
I would like to ask you, is it the 6 and 7 sugar, is it your fasting sugar that you test first thing in the morning, or is it just random sugar throughout the day? When do you test? Fasting.
The fasting sugar in the morning, first thing in the morning.
I think that is a question for your doctor. I am a dietitian, so I can advise you in terms of foods, but in terms of your medication, the best is to go to your doctor. He looks at a test we call HbA1c, and that is a test that gives you average an idea of your average sugar over a period of 3 months, because our sugars go up and down all the time, you know, depending on when we eat, how much we eat, stress levels. And what the doctors do, they look at that value because it gives them an average to say, you know what, it should be ideally 7%. They also look at fasting sugars, and they ask people often to record their sugars. And I think that's what you need to present to him, because he looked then at other factors in your life as well, and he can then recommend the dosage of your dimicron.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you for your call.
Right,
Back
Assalamu
to
alaikum.
you, walaikum salam. Back to you, Ria. You keep referring to fasting sugars. What's the difference compared to the pinprick and they test your sugar
Fasting
that way?
sugars is when people with diabetes test their sugars first thing in the morning before they've eaten, is after an overnight fast when we sleep. And what that represents is the amount of glucose or sugar that the liver releases into the bloodstream. Because we get the glucose that we test in our blood comes from food, but we eat 3 times a day. And in between meals and at night when we don't eat, the liver releases a little bit of glucose into our bloodstream. So the liver stores glucose from food. So if we eat a meal, not all of that glucose go into our bloodstream. Some get stored in the liver. And it's a backup that the body has, because we always need glucose in our bloodstream, because our brain cells continuously need glucose to keep us conscious. So if we don't eat, let's say we fast, nothing happened, we don't faint, we feel hungry, but we're conscious. And that's when the liver comes into play and release some glucose into our bloodstream when we don't eat to back us up. And that is the glucose levels that you normally see in the morning.
Okay. We're going to take an ad break now. Don't forget our studio lines are open on 011 086 7777. We're talking to dietitian Ria Katsikas. We're talking about metabolic syndrome and diabetes, and of course the giveaway of her book, The Complete Nutritional Solution to Diabetes. Do call in. You might stand in line to win one of these books, or a sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets, or an Amla hair care hamper from an Amca hair care hamper from Amla. So call in 086 7777. We'll see you right after the break. This is ITV. We're broadcasting live from Johannesburg, the Wednesday edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Ali. My guest is Ria Katsikas. She is a dietitian operating from Johannesburg. She's also the author of this book, The Complete Nutritional Solution to Diabetes, and we are going to give away one of these books on the show this morning. So call in and stand in line to win either a book, a sweet hamper, or an Amla hair care hamper on the number 011 086 7777. Keep us company. We are here with you till 10 o'clock this morning. Ria, back to you. Let's talk about type 1 and type 2 diabetes. What is it saying to us when someone says to you, I've been diagnosed with type 1 or type 2 diabetes? What does that mean?
Type 2 diabetes is what I've described earlier in the show, where it's a gradual deterioration of the beta cells in the pancreas, where they die off and they cannot produce enough insulin to overcome the resistance, because our cells are resistant to insulin due to the abdominal fat. It develops normally later in life with people. Key factors there is being overweight, inactive, wrong diet. That's the type 2.
And also, I should imagine eating just too much of the wrong types of food.
Absolutely, yeah. Eating too much, large portions of food and too much of the wrong food. And normally doctors treat it by starting with medication, like the caller mentioned, Dimicron, and then as, you know, it's basically lifestyle, medication and activity. Those three pillars is the treatment of type 2 diabetes, and as we don't do the lifestyle, we need to rely more on the medication to control the blood sugar levels, because that is of essence in type 2 diabetes, otherwise you develop complications.
But the medication also has side effects.
Yes, but the issue is if you eat badly and you're not exercising, you need a lot of medication to really control your sugars, and you need to do that because otherwise complications develop. If you start walking, if you start eating healthy, obviously you need less medication. But then doctors will then progress from tablets to insulin injections. The main objective is to control that blood sugar levels, because you do not want to end up with complications. Type 1 normally develop younger in life, with children and younger people. It's an autoimmune response of the body, where your body's own immune system destroy the pancreatic cells within a day or two. It's a quick transition from having insulin in your body, nothing wrong with you. Within a week or two later, you have absolutely very, very little amount of insulin to move the glucose into the cells, and you're then depending on insulin injections.
All right, sorry about that, but let's take a call. Our next caller, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam. My name is Mariam.
Welcome,
Hello.
nice to have you here.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you too, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, I can hear you, please go ahead.
My name is Mariam. I'm calling from Pietermaritzburg.
Yes. You have a question or a comment for us?
Yeah, I've got some questions. I've been going to the looping a lot recently and sweating a lot. Is it one of the signs of diabetes?
I presume she means she's passing a lot of water.
Urinating a lot, and there was something else.
What is the other question, please, sister?
Okay.
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
proceed.
All right, can I
Urinating,
just,
yes.
she wants to know if it's if there's a genetic component,
Yes.
and of course that she goes to the loo a lot.
Yes. Okay. Like all conditions, not only diabetes, all conditions have a genetic component. We all get born with certain what we call gene mutations, and depending on our lifestyle, because lifestyle affect our genes, we can develop the conditions our mothers and fathers had in later life. Yeah. So diabetes, type 2 diabetes, have a genetic component. In terms of frequent urination, it is a sign of having type 2 diabetes.
But what about, Ria, if you a person who drinks more than 8 glasses of water a day, obviously you are going to
Yes.
go to the bathroom
Yes,
that much
yes,
more
yes.
often.
Yes, but when you have type 2 diabetes, this frequency of urination is excessive. It's definitely something out of the extraordinary. You're also very thirsty, because what's happening now, the glucose is in your blood, doesn't get into your cells, and your body try to get rid of it by flushing it into the urine. So it creates a thirst in the body. So you get thirsty and you start drinking a lot, and then you urinating frequently. So the thirst is also there, and it's unusual. You know exactly this is not how you normally are. You know. Yes.
Okay, another call online. This obviously is a very interesting subject and close to a lot of people's hearts. I'm sure that people do want to make lifestyle changes. So, to our next caller, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, your question, please, sister, go ahead.
I'd like to know if you're type 2 diabetic, do you need to go to a nutritionist?
A dietitian.
Oh, dietitian, yes.
And is that your question?
That's all, yes.
Okay, shukran for your call. Assalamu alaikum to you. Obviously, they wanting to know the type of diet they should be following and lifestyle changes.
Yeah. It's a very good question. It's absolutely non-negotiable. You have to go and see a dietitian. There's dietitians available at all hospitals. You can also phone the Association for Dietitians in Southern Africa. It's www.adsa, it's ADSA, it stands for the Association for Dietetics in Southern Africa, .org.za. What I'm saying is this: I can give advice, and you can read advice, and you can read books, and you can go onto the website, and you read you should not eat this and you should not eat that. But knowledge does not translate into action. So you need to see a person who can help you to actually start eating better and acquire that healthy eating habits. So what dietitians then do, they look at your lifestyle. Who cooks? What do you do weekend? You know, who shops for the food? Do education that you understand how food impact on your weight and how food impact on your blood sugar level. So there's an understanding of the physiology, understanding of foods. And then you plan a menu and an eating plan and a menu and a shopping list. People need that practical tools to put it into practice. We know a lot of things we don't do. We just follow our old habits, buy the same foods. And very important, and I need to stress that, is that the family should start eating healthier. Because one person in a household can't eat healthy and the rest of the family eat unhealthy. True. It's not going to be sustainable. As we talk about lifestyle change, means you have to actually start slowly but surely, start eating, start walking, start eating healthy, and the whole family should start eating healthier, because all of us, independent of diabetes, metabolic syndrome, should actually eat, as suggested for people with diabetes, healthy food most of the time. It's not to say you can never have a piece of cake, but that's what the dietitian then tell you, how often, how much, and the whole family should start making healthier choices. There need to be healthier food in the home available, and the unhealthy food should be less available, because that's what we do. If it's available, it's very difficult to resist it.
We've almost come to the end of the show, so 2 quick questions. Yes. What about someone who's constantly hungry and needs to eat all the time? And then mom's role. She plays a very huge role, because we try and express our love through the way we feed our children and our families, so we tend to overfeed them. Yeah. So a person who's hungry all the time, what is that telling you? And obviously mom has a huge role. She needs to cut back on all the junk foods and the luxuries, etc. How do you respond to that?
First of all, the hunger, we need to say, is it real hunger? Because often there's just a desire to eat, and it's not real hunger. We're just in the habit of eating, and we want to snack due to, as I said, power of habit or the availability of food. And I normally say, how do you distinguish, are you really hungry or you just want to eat? Is to think of an unappetizing food, like cold oats porridge. It's not really appetizing. Will you eat it? If the answer is no, you're not really hungry. Because there's also a psychological hunger. We feel stressed, we feel anxious, and we think we want to eat to get a stress relief.
Comfort food.
Comfort food. That's the thing. So real hunger, you need to then eat healthier foods and snack on fruit instead of unhealthy food. Exactly, or fruit. And if it's really persisting and it's really, truly real hunger that you're absolutely starving and you don't know why you're starving all the time, you need to go and see a doctor.
Okay.
In terms of
unfortunately, Ria, we've come to the end of our time. I'm so sorry, but we can pick up another time. I think very important discussion to be had. More and more people are wanting to know about this condition, metabolic syndrome and diabetes. Go to the website, try and pick up as much as you can, and remember the golden rule, go and see a dietitian. So thank you for your time, and we're now going to pay the rent. When we get back, we're going to be talking suicide. Our next guest is Tracy Feinstein. She is from SADC. We're going to be talking suicide, the growing trend amongst youngsters, teenagers specifically, not only in South Africa but all around the world, and the impact on the people they leave behind. But let's take a look at this clip from SADC, and then we'll go into the interview with Tracy in a short while.
You know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual,
acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason,
or getting really mad,
not able to sleep, or sleeping too much,
shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away,
acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late,
suddenly not doing stuff he used to love,
or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed.
Not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself.
It happens. More than you think. More than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said something.
I wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person.
So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead.
I can't live with this.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Take her seriously. Find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure.
But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself.
Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
But don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts.
Suicide can be very devastating for the people left behind. If you lose a loved one through illness or an accident, it's a terrible loss. But you say to yourself that it was an accident or it was due to an illness. But when you lose someone through suicide, you always go through life wondering, was there something you could have done to have prevented that suicide of your loved one? And I think that haunts you for the rest of your life. Good morning, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Would I be correct in thinking that suicide is something that you never ever get over?
Very much so. And, you know, the research and the information that we work with shows that probably 70% of the people who successfully commit suicide actually have made an intentional effort to communicate with loved ones close to them. And so hence you have this thing exactly like the children in the clip are saying, if only I knew, if only I had looked at the warning
Our
signs.
community in Cape Town,
and
the difficulties that they sometimes may have,
the suicide stats are continuing to rise. We're looking at 23 suicides a day, 23, 24 a day, and close to 400 attempted suicides. Those are the ones we know of. And the thing is that, you know, when you get back to the basics, and let's talk about the children, there is so much pressure to perform, to be socially acceptable, to be able to cope with the stress of day-to-day life. And these kids are not managing. And sadly, for whatever reason, their value for life is suddenly shortened. And before you know it, a suicide attempt is taking place, or it's actually being successful. So we need to be aware, and I think from SADAG's point of view, as much as it's a topic where we might think, why do we want to go on TV? Why do we want to talk about suicide? You know, if we don't create an awareness of hope, that there is an organization that can educate you, can advise you perhaps of options to go and get help, to speak to somebody, understand what you're feeling at a particular time, you know, then we haven't done something about it. So it's not about talking about suicide, it's rather about creating hope that there is a last-minute call that you can make, and create the education and awareness, especially for parents, for teachers, for mentors out there, to actually be aware of what these kids are going through.
So, Tracy, you are a counsellor at SADC.
Yes.
Would you say that the majority of the calls that you as counsellors at SADC receive are, has to do with suicide, or, you know, are there other social issues as well that's driving people to seek help?
Yeah. I think there's a lot around the social issues, okay? And very often with youngsters, The vocabulary that they use to express themselves, perhaps at the time of the call, doesn't necessarily mean that at that point in time they are completely suicidal. However, I'd like to pick up on that point a little bit later. But let's talk about the things where there are the social things. So, for example, a 15-year-old phones in and they say, like, I feel like it's the end of my life. I feel extremely depressed. What has happened in your life? That's what the counselor we would ask. Well, my boyfriend or my girlfriend broke up with me. My life is over. It's the end of my world. You and I as adults know that at 15, you're going to have a lot more makeups and breakups that are going to follow. So it's about talking to them in a very caring way and assuring them that this is part of life. But maybe we need to look deeper into how were they broken up. Sometimes, I mean, and the kids nowadays are breaking up over technology, you know, over the cell phone, a WhatsApp message, it's over.
Oh, no, even marriages are being broken up that way, via text message.
Yeah. So, you know, you have this. So social bullying, verbal abuse on the social media platform is extremely, very difficult to cope when an event of breaking up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend is actually quite normal, but it's the way they're doing it and the things that they are saying. So we need to we talk them through that. If they are able then to confidently and get the assurance from a counselor that they can go and speak to, if it's not a parent, perhaps somebody at school, a mentor, a pastor, a minister, and even call a place like SADAG. They can phone us anonymously. Obviously, we try and refer them further for some form of therapy. Because if a person says, you know what, that's the last breakup and my life is over, that is part of our awareness that we want to create. We want to say, you know what, when these kids are saying these words, my life is over, it's not worth living, I don't like my life. Gone are the days that we as adults can actually look back and say, you know what, they're just seeking attention. Let's leave it. Because unfortunately, that is one of the messages they are communicating.
There obviously going to be instances where people are attention seeking and they verbalize those type of words. How are you going to know what is genuine and what's not? What would be the red flag?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And some of the red flags, and let's look again, especially around the youth, is they're using the terminology, my life is over, that's one thing. Have a look at their behavior changes. Very often these kids are withdrawing. So go to school, they may still be around with their friends, but they get home, they go straight to their bedroom. They may not even join the family around family dinner. Supper is served and they take their tray to their bedroom and they're in their bedroom, isolated, alone. Friends may ask them to go out with them. No, I don't feel like going out, I'll just stay at home. I don't want to be with anybody. So those kind of behavior changes, be alert and watch for them.
Depression? We'll get back to the red flags in the course of the interview. But a person who threatens to commit suicide and starts isolating themselves, shouldn't you be looking to support them through perhaps acute or clinical depression for that matter?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost is if you are getting a picture that person is wanting to commit suicide, you mustn't leave them alone. You actually need to get help rather quickly. And I think just before the interview we kind of chatted, people that might not know where to go for help. And very often if you're looking to say, okay, fine, I need to get them to the doctor, I need to get them to a psychologist because they need to talk through the problem, very often there's a waiting period, sometimes as long as 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So that is the time to actually connect. Don't leave the person alone. Have a look around the house or their place of abode where they are. Make sure that the practical things, because again, I say it, that people are knowing these things because they're going on the internet, they're seeing it. There are no weapons in the house, that those are not available and easily accessible. Things like cords hanging around. People are hanging themselves. These kids are doing it and they do it successfully. There's no access to medication for them to overdose. And you can actually ask the direct question, as counsellors we do. have you thought of a plan of how you're going to take your life? And it's amazing that 17% of students actually have thought out a plan. And they say to the counsellor, yes, I know what I'm going to do, and I have this. So the fact that they have actually got there mentally says that, yeah, they actually passed the depression stage, they have a plan of action, and they're going to go through with it. So you've got to be aware of those kind of things and actually go into crisis mode to help them manage that situation. Getting back to
crisis
vital
mode
signs.
being?
Crisis mode, I need to get intervention now. So let's look at as well, you know, you might say, well, where do I take them if I can't get an appointment with a psychologist? Fortunately, for people who have got medical aid and are able to access private facilities, the list is fairly endless. But again, as an NGO, we deal with a lot of people who don't have access to that. So a call, what we can do is help you to navigate the clinics, the government hospitals. Because youngsters might think, you know what, if I haven't got a broken arm or if I haven't got a cut that needs stitches, what do I say when I get to emergency? One of the tips is that the patient who is feeling depressed or suicidal actually needs to be partnered by a loved one or a close friend, because very often they're not going to feel comfortable to share with the doctor the deep sense of hopelessness that they are explaining and experiencing. So the friend or the loved one actually has to say, no, this is what has been going on for the last 24 hours and this is actually what is happening. And then the process of getting a psychiatrist into the ER to do the assessment can actually help and take place.
We're talking to Tracy Feinstein from SADC. We're talking suicide, the warning signs, the red flags that you need to look out for if a loved one is threatening suicide, and when and how do you take them seriously. All of that coming up right after the break. Now, lots of cultures and religions obviously don't condone suicide. Islam as well. We view life as very precious, and life is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we need to live to its fullest. But sadly, there are suicides in our community as well. So what is it that drives people to that length, you know, decide that this is it, life is just not worth living? Well, I guess that there are also mental issues to be looked at, and of course deep depression, which we alluded to just now. So let's continue the discussion on suicide, and you can call in. Our lines are open on 011 086 7777. So back to you and the issue around suicide. As I mentioned, cultures and religions that don't condone suicide, it's seen as a sin because life is a very precious gift, and you need to, really live life to its fullest, embrace it. And also families, parents and relatives who have lost a loved one through suicide. I'm wondering about stigma. Is there a stigma attached? What and how do those people cope?
Yeah. The stigma issue around suicide is still huge. The stigma issue around mental health is still big. And in the diversity of the different cultures and religions. Again, bringing it back to the teens, in that age group of teens and early young adolescent, that is the time that they are often exploring the different options that are out there. And one of them may be the religious choices. They're wanting to find out more what is out there. So where they are not perhaps having the conversation with adults or teachers or parents in the community, they are exploring this on the internet. And I would imagine that, they tend to get this sense of confusion. There is something else out there. How do I handle it? How do I approach the subject with my parents? And I think that whole thing of awareness and being a lot more open to at least talk to the children or allow the children to open the conversation. Even if you don't want to go the discussion, whether it be a religious discussion, that complete shut off, it's not for us, it's not for you, it's not for me. is immediately putting a break of communication between parent and child. And I would imagine that in the different cultures, and the stigma issue around it, is that when they can't communicate their feelings and what is the root cause of their feelings, then this deep sense of hopelessness is what triggers depression. You mentioned the issue around other mental health issues. We talk around that there is a genetic trend. So if there are people in the family who have been diagnosed previously with things like clinical depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, there is a line that it could be evident further down the family line, so parents or even children.
Can I just ask this question here? When you have a caller threatening to commit suicide, do you as counsellors ever bring up the issue of, have you discussed this with your parent or your loved ones, or does religion come into the picture at all?
We don't have a specific religious affliction or association at all. However, if the caller had to say, we pick up on tips. The caller had to say, I'm not going to my church any longer. Or I've tried to speak to the minister and no one wants to listen to me. We may bring up the subject of saying, well, which church community are you with? Or they may say, I used to go to church a little while ago, I no longer want to go. Whether I was at a shul or a mosque or whatever it may be. So we would pick up if there was a thing from the caller. If there's a suicide caller, our first intervention is to assure safety of the individual. So we try and establish, are they alone? Is it possible that there's somebody else in the house? We would obviously try and encourage them to take our help to get medical assistance, i.e. get them to a place of safety, a hospital, a clinic. And that is the initial intervention that we take. Mm-hmm. And obviously it takes time, depending on where the caller is at. Some are very more specific. You could have a caller who has taken an overdose. They are busy drinking, and you can actually hear them slurring their words. So you've got to go into crisis mode, intervention. We need to get medical help, and then the psychological help will follow once they've been admitted. And there's others that just want to talk, but they keep going back to the place that they are going to take their life. And we take,
and there's nothing you can do about that. They probably just want someone to figuratively hold their hands until they've made the decision, or perhaps have even overdosed and is just talking to you to while away the time. They don't want to die alone, so to speak.
Very much. And I would like to think that very large percentage of our calls, we are actually able to encourage the person, talk them through, get somebody else to be with them and get them to medical safety first and foremost, and encourage the process of psychological help because they don't understand it.
We've actually come to the end of the show, and there's still so much more to cover, but perhaps in a future show. Do you want to give us your website address, please?
Yes, thank you. Our website is www.sadag.org. We have a toll-free number, 0800 567 567, and we also have an SMS helpline which works for the students. They can actually call, send an SMS, please help, and we will get back to them, and that number is 31393.
So remember, you are not alone. If you do feel helpless and hopeless, there is someone out there that would hold your hand, listen to you, and perhaps try and give you some form of direction and show you that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that is the support group called SADC. We're going to wrap up now, but let's share our very short thought for the day, and that is our greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. From everyone here at the Let's Talk team, thank you so much for being with us till Saturday morning at the same time. As always, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali. Ya hello, ya hello, ya hello, ya hello, ya hello,
ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا